The last bell before lunch echoed across Roosevelt Middle School, a place where lockers rattled, sneakers squeaked on waxed floors, and occasional shouts from rowdy eighth graders bounced off the walls. In room 207, however, the atmosphere felt different, tighter, heavier, like something was about to snap. 12-year-old Malik Turner, quiet, thoughtful, always polite, sat at his desk with his notebook open and pencil perfectly sharpened. He wasn't the loudest kid. He wasn't the kind to cause trouble. But he carried something deeper: discipline, respect, and a strong sense of who he was. His dad had taught him that. But today, that pride was about to be tested. Their history teacher, Mrs. Dillard, paced the front of the classroom with her usual stiff posture and narrowed eyes. She was known for being harsh, but something about the way she looked at Malik was different, sharper, colder, like she saw a problem where none existed. "All right, class," she said, tapping the board with her marker. "Your homework was to write a short paragraph about your parents' jobs. Who wants to share first?" Hands shot up across the room, kids eager to talk about parents who worked at grocery stores, construction sites, local businesses. Nothing unusual. But then Malik, who rarely volunteered, lifted his hand. A few kids turned in surprise. Malik? Raising his hand? Mrs. Dillard pressed her lips together. "Yes, Malik," she asked, sounding almost annoyed that he was participating. He stood up carefully, unfolding the paper he had written with neat handwriting. "My dad works for the United States Army. He's—" A small smile tugged at the corner of his mouth, the kind a person gets when talking about someone they admire deeply. "He's a 4-star general." The room froze. For a full second, not a breath moved. A couple of kids blinked, a few others whispered in shock. Everyone knew 4-star generals were rare, leaders of the entire military structure, heroes. But Mrs. Dillard didn't look impressed. In fact, she let out a sharp, humorless laugh. "Ha! A 4-star general," she repeated, practically spitting the words out. "Malik, that's enough. Sit down." Confusion swept over the boy's face. "But it's true," he said gently. "I said sit down," she snapped. "We don't tolerate lies in this classroom, not from anyone." The word lies hit him like a slap. A few students looked uncomfortable. Others stared at Malik with wide eyes, some sympathetic, some stunned. No one had ever seen the teacher call a kid out so publicly, so aggressively. "But I'm not lying," Malik repeated, voice smaller now. "My dad—" Mrs. Dillard slammed her hand on the desk. "Enough!" she barked. "You expect us to believe that someone like you has a father who's a 4-star general? That title is reserved for the highest level of leadership in the military, and I will not tolerate made-up stories for attention." Something in her phrasing made Malik's chest tighten. "Someone like you." He knew exactly what she meant. Everyone did. The classroom temperature dropped. Some kids looked away, embarrassed on her behalf. Others stared at Malik with pity. A few smirked, sensing drama they could gossip about later. "But I'm not making it up," Malik repeated, voice smaller now. "My dad comes home tomorrow morning. My mom said—" "I don't care what your mother told you," she said sharply. "You will rewrite your assignment and tell the truth next time." A low murmur rippled across the room. Malik felt the sting behind his eyes. He wasn't a crier. His dad always told him crying wasn't weakness. But right now he felt stripped, humiliated, made small in front of the entire class. He lowered himself slowly into his seat, fingers tightening around the edge of his desk. His face burned with shame. He wasn't ashamed of his dad. Never. He was ashamed of being called a liar for telling the truth, ashamed that his teacher saw him as less, ashamed that no one spoke up for him. That's when Sam, the boy who sat next to him, leaned over and whispered, "Hey, Are you serious? Your dad is really a 4-star? Malik nodded once. Wow, Sam breathed. But even that little spark of validation didn't ease the knot growing in Malik's throat. Minutes felt like hours. The clock ticked louder than usual. Mrs. Dillard continued teaching, but her words blurred into muffled noise. Finally, the bell rang. Everyone rushed out, except for Malik. He stayed in his seat, packing his backpack slowly, methodically. He didn't trust his hands not to shake. Mrs. Dillard stood by her desk, arms crossed, staring at him with that same condescending expression. "I expect honesty tomorrow," she said, her voice low but firm. "And next time, don't fabricate stories to impress your classmates." He looked up at her, eyes steady, voice soft. "I wasn't trying to impress anyone," he said. "I was just telling the truth." She gave a dismissive shrug. "We'll see." He left the room quietly. But as he walked down the hallway, something shifted. He didn't cry. He didn't break. He just whispered to himself the words his dad told him every single time before deployment. Truth doesn't need permission. And tomorrow, the truth was going to walk into that classroom, wearing 4 stars on each shoulder. And when it did, Mrs. Dillard would regret ever calling him a liar.
The bus ride home felt longer than usual. Like every bump in the road carried the weight of what had happened in room 207. Malik sat alone near the window, forehead leaning against the cool glass, watching the city blur past, the corner store with faded signs, the playground where kids shouted after school, the old brick fire station. But today, none of it felt familiar. None of it felt safe. He kept replaying the moment in his head, Mrs. Dillard's voice echoing like a sharp needle. "We don't tolerate lies in this classroom, not from anyone." He could still hear the gasps, the whispers, the awkward silence afterward. It felt like being pushed underwater while everyone watched without helping. When the bus finally stopped near his neighborhood, Malik stepped out quietly. The air smelled like freshly cut grass and someone grilling down the street. Kids were riding bikes. A dog barked behind a fence, and sprinklers hissed across green lawns. Everything looked normal, but inside him, nothing was. He walked up the driveway of a white 2-story home with an American flag fluttering gently by the porch. His mom always kept it up, not out of cliché pride, but because this was her reminder. He's coming back. He always comes back. Inside, the house smelled like warm cornbread and rosemary chicken. Music played softly from the kitchen. Old R&B, the kind his father loved. His mom, Andrea Turner, stood at the counter wearing her work scrubs, cutting vegetables, humming as she cooked. But the moment she turned and saw Malik's face, the smile faded instantly. She rushed toward him. "Baby, what happened? Why do you look like somebody hurt you?" Malik tried to answer, but his throat tightened. Andrea gently cupped his face with both hands. "Hey, you can tell me anything." He swallowed hard and whispered, "My teacher, she called me a liar." Andrea lowered her hand slowly. "About what?" Malik's voice cracked. "About Dad." Something in her expression changed. Her eyes sharpened, her jaw tightened. What exactly did she say? Malik told her everything, every word, every detail. How the teacher laughed, how she humiliated him, how she said "someone like you," and how the class went silent. Andrea stood there, her fingers curling into her palms, not angry because of pride, not angry because of the disrespect, but angry because she recognized the kind of wound that doesn't heal with time, it grows. She pulled him into a long, tight hug. "Oh, baby, I'm so sorry. You didn't deserve that. Not for 1 second. He pressed his face into her shoulder. Why would she think I'm lying? Dad is a 4-star general. He's worked so hard. Andrea stroked his hair. Some people assume things they shouldn't. Sometimes even adults act out of ignorance or prejudice. But guess what? She leaned back and wiped his tears with her thumb. Tomorrow, your dad is coming home. And trust me, she won't have anything to say once she sees the truth. Malik managed a small smile. Do you think he'll be mad? Oh, he'll be furious, she said, letting out a breathy laugh. Not at you. They moved to the dining table, and Andrea placed a warm plate of rosemary chicken, rice, and cornbread in front of him. Malik ate slowly, still processing everything. After dinner, Andrea called her husband on video chat. The screen flickered a moment before stabilizing, and there he was. General Marcus Turner. Tall, commanding, distinguished. Silver-starred uniform, sharp, steady gaze, the kind of presence that filled a room even through a screen. Hey, champ, he said with a smile that softened his whole face. I heard somebody had a rough day. Malik looked down. Hi, Dad. Marcus's smile disappeared. Tell me what happened. Malik repeated the story, but this time he didn't cry. He spoke calmly, firmly, like his father taught him. His dad listened carefully, not interrupting once. When Malik finished, Marcus inhaled slowly. Son, look at me. Malik lifted his eyes. You did nothing wrong. You told the truth. And in this family, truth stands taller than any accusation. He continued, voice steady and deep. People fear what they don't understand. They underestimate what they don't expect. But tomorrow she'll understand exactly who you are and where you come from. Malik nodded. I'll be home at 0700, straight into uniform. We'll handle this together. Andrea crossed her arms. And I'll be right beside you. Marcus gave a small smirk. Wouldn't want to face the school without you, babe. Malik laughed, just a little, but enough to ease the tension in the room. After they hung up, he went upstairs to shower and change into pajamas. But instead of playing games or watching TV, he opened the small wooden box his father gave him when he was only 9. Inside was a medal, silver and gold, awarded to his dad during a rescue mission years ago. His father used to say, courage isn't about standing tall. It's about standing even when someone tries to push you down. He held the medal tight. Downstairs, Andrea watched from the doorway, eyes soft. She knew tomorrow would be a moment her son would remember for the rest of his life, not because of revenge, but because the truth would stand in uniform right in front of the woman who doubted it. Later that night, Malik crawled into bed, pulling the blanket up to his chin. The house felt peaceful. His mother kissed his forehead and whispered, Sleep well, my grave boy. Tomorrow is your day. As the room dimmed, Malik closed his eyes with a calm he hadn't felt all day. He wasn't afraid anymore. He wasn't humiliated anymore. Because in the morning, 4 shining stars would walk through the doors of Roosevelt Middle School, and the silence that would follow would change everything.
The sun had barely risen when General Marcus Turner stepped out of the black SUV parked in front of Roosevelt Middle School. The morning air was crisp, carrying a faint chill, but Marcus walked with the calm, steady confidence of a man who had faced far worse than cold winds. He was dressed in full-service uniform, pressed jacket, perfectly polished shoes, rows of ribbons, and on each shoulder, 4 shining stars, the highest rank in the U.S. Army, a symbol of leadership, sacrifice, and unimaginable responsibility. Students walking toward the building slowed down, whispering, wide-eyed. Parents pulling into the drop-off lane stared openly.
A security guard outside the entrance straightened instantly. Good morning, sir," the guard stammered. General Turner gave a respectful nod. "Good morning." Inside the school, the principal, Mr. Henderson, was already hurrying down the hallway after receiving an urgent call from the front desk. He reached the foyer, slightly out of breath. The moment he saw who was standing there, he froze. "General Turner." "Sir, I wasn't informed you would be visiting. This isn't a scheduled visit. This is personal." The principal swallowed. Hard. He immediately understood this wasn't just a proud parent stopping by. "Is this about Malik?" Marcus nodded once. The principal's shoulders dropped. I heard there was a situation yesterday. Mrs. Dillard didn't give me the full details, but she called my son a liar, humiliated him in front of the class, made assumptions about him, about our family, about his truth. The principal winced. "Sir, I am very sorry. Please allow me to speak with her." "No." Marcus's tone was calm, but unshakable. "I'll speak with her myself." Before the principal could respond, the school doors opened again, and Malik walked in with his backpack slung over one shoulder. The moment he saw his dad, his face lit up, not with the relief of a child needing protection, but with pride, real, deep pride. Marcus crouched slightly and opened his arms. Malik ran into them, hugging his father tightly. "You look sharp, champ. Ready to handle this?" Malik nodded. "Yes, sir." Andrea arrived seconds later, stepping out of her car and walking briskly into the building. She kissed her husband on the cheek, straightened a small crease on his sleeve, and whispered, "Let's go show her." The Turners walked together, general, mother, and son, down the long hallway toward room 207. Students whispered as they passed, "Is that a general? No way. That's Malik's dad? Bro, 4 stars?" Teachers peeked from their doorways, confused and alarmed. But nothing, not the stares, not the whispers, compared to what waited inside room 207. Inside the classroom, Mrs. Dillard was writing on the whiteboard when the door opened. She turned, annoyed. "Yes, can I help you?" She hadn't looked properly yet. But the moment her eyes rose, and she saw the uniform, and the stars, and the rigid posture of a man who commanded armies, her jaw loosened. The marker slipped from her hand and clattered to the floor. General, sir, I didn't expect." "No," Marcus said, stepping into the room, voice smooth and controlled. "You didn't." The students gasped. A few sat up straighter. Some whispered Malik's name. Malik walked in behind his father and took his seat quietly. Mrs. Dillard forced a trembling smile. How may I help you today?" Marcus didn't raise his voice, he didn't glare, he didn't intimidate. But his presence did all that without effort. "I am here because yesterday my son told the truth, and you chose to humiliate him for it." Mrs. Dillard's face flushed red. "General Turner, I simply thought he was exaggerating and—" "You didn't think," Marcus interrupted gently. "You assumed. Based on what exactly?" She opened her mouth and closed it again. "Did my son ever lie to you before?" "No, sir." "Has he ever caused trouble? Been disrespectful? Disruptive?" "No, sir." "So why Marcus continued, leaning slightly forward, was the first time he takes pride in my service, the first time he shares something personal, the moment you choose to tear him down. Mrs. Dillard swallowed hard. I didn't mean to insult him. I just didn't think. That much is clear. The classroom was silent. Every student watched, some with wide eyes, some with quiet satisfaction, justice unfolding right in front of them. Marcus didn't raise a finger. He didn't need to. A 4-star general, Marcus said softly, does not earn these stars by lying, and neither does my son. He turned to the class. Students, I want you to understand something. A person's worth, their honesty, their potential is not determined by what you assume when you look at them. Some students nodded. Others looked down, feeling the weight of the lesson. Marcus looked back at Mrs. Dillard. You owe him an apology. She froze. Her pride swelled in her chest. She had never been corrected like this, especially not in front of a full classroom. But she also knew this was one of those moments where anything less than humility would destroy her credibility forever. She turned to Malik. Her voice shook. Malik, I'm truly sorry. I should not have doubted you. I should not have spoken to you the way I did. And I should not have made assumptions about your family. Malik didn't smile. Didn't look smug. Didn't look triumphant. He just nodded politely and said, Thank you. Marcus placed a hand on his son's shoulder, and for the first time since yesterday, Malik felt the knot inside his chest loosen completely. The classroom was deathly silent when General Malik stepped in. His polished shoes clicked against the floor, echoing in the tense room. The teacher's eyes widened in disbelief. She recognized him instantly, the very boy she had humiliated yesterday, now standing tall in full military regalia. Malik's classmates turned to stare, whispering in awe and confusion. The general's gaze swept the room, calm but commanding. Good morning, he said firmly, each word measured. The teacher, pale and trembling, could barely speak. All her bravado from the previous day evaporated instantly. She opened her mouth to explain, but the words faltered. General Malik slowly approached the teacher's desk. Yesterday, he began, his voice steady, I witnessed the moment that did not reflect the values we all must uphold: honesty, respect, and fairness. It is important to acknowledge mistakes when they are made. The teacher swallowed hard, shame flooding her face. I was wrong, she whispered, almost inaudibly. I judged Malik without evidence. I let my assumptions cloud my judgment. I am truly sorry. Malik's eyes softened, but he did not lower his dignity. Acknowledging our mistakes is the first step toward growth. Respect is not given based on appearances, assumptions, or status. It is earned through understanding and integrity. He turned to the classroom, his presence commanding attention. Class, let this be a lesson for all of us. Prejudice, even unintentional, can cause deep pain. Each one of you has a responsibility to treat others with fairness. Words matter, actions matter, and respect is non-negotiable. The teacher nodded, tears welling up. She stood and faced the students. I want to apologize to you, Malik, and to the entire class, she said, her voice trembling. I failed to act with fairness, and I promise to do better. I will ensure no student is ever made to feel less than they are. The classroom atmosphere shifted. Students whispered, some nodding. Respect was tangible now, not the fear or tension from before, but understanding and humility. Malik nodded, acknowledging the apology, and returned a small, respectful smile.
The weeks that followed were transformative. Malik walked into school with a renewed sense of confidence. He no longer hesitated to raise his hand, to speak up, or to share his thoughts. The classroom had changed too. Students treated one another with newfound kindness, and the teacher consistently reflected on her own biases before reacting. During a class discussion, Malik's teacher invited him to share a story from his father's military experience. Malik spoke eloquently about dedication, courage, and service. His classmates listened, mesmerized, not because of his father's rank, but because Malik's words were insightful and inspiring. The teacher had become an advocate for fairness, often reminding students that assumptions could be dangerous. We must listen, observe, and understand before judging, she would say. Every person has a story. Every story deserves respect. Malik's confidence extended beyond the classroom. He excelled in debates, school events, and even helped mediate disputes among his peers. The incident that once caused him heartbreak had transformed into a source of strength and motivation. At home, his parents watched with pride. "You handled everything with grace," his father said one evening, placing a firm hand on Malik's shoulder. "Truth and dignity will always shine, even when challenged." Malik smiled. "I understand now, Dad. Respect isn't just about what others see. It's about how you carry yourself." The story ended not with anger or resentment, but with growth, understanding, and the quiet power of truth. Malik had learned that even in moments of humiliation, dignity and integrity could prevail, and so could the lessons of respect, both for oneself and for others.